Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good late morning, I would say. We are very honored today to have my very good friend, Dr. Norshah Hafeez, Shuaib, from MTC. So I have known Norshah since more than 25 years now. We were classmates in our secondary school. And I am very, very honored today to have you here to give some insight to our students. These are first and second year students mostly, undergraduate success attributes course. And we would like Norshah to share with us his insight on the current issues and preparedness for students as professional engineers as you graduate after you finish your studies here. So I will actually, Norshah is actually the Executive Director and Chief Technical Officer for MTC Group, but I will leave the detailed introduction to you, Norshah, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hafeez. Assalamualaikum. Very good morning. Selamat Hari Raya. I think we're still in Raya mode.
Yes, yeah.
And basically, thank you to Dr. Hafeez for inviting me for the talk. It's more like an informal session just to share with the students what are the expectations, what are the current issues, the current trends that are faced by industries nowadays. I mean, for you guys, the students, to prepare yourself, I understand that you guys are first and second year students, so it's good for you to help be aware earlier. Yeah. So the title is Current Issues and Preparedness for Professional Engineering Practice. Okay, next, Hafeez. Okay, just a brief introduction to myself. My name is Norshah. My background is mechanical engineer. I graduated back in 2001. My PhD was in mechanical as well, back in 2005. And basically, I have worked previously as an academician, a researcher, a consultant, and currently I'm running my own practice. You can call it practice or business with some partners. So basically, I have an experience covering the academician as well as the industry, as well as I've been an entrepreneur. So I hope I can share with you my experience, and please feel free to ask me any questions if you have any things that you want to ask. So the presentation outline for today, I mean, we're not going to strictly follow this slide because as I prepared this slide, I think this is for quite a lengthy talk. I think it's about maybe 2 hours slot for an engineers in society kind of subject. So it's okay, don't mind that. So we are going to cover briefly in terms of the engineering profession itself. I mean, we're not going to cover what is mechanical engineer, what are electrical engineers, and so on. But when we talk about industry preparedness, yeah, the things that is always bothering graduates is that when you go to interview or when you want to find jobs later on, I mean, you don't know where to start. This is more one of the things that is actually being asked by potential graduates going into the industry. You know, when I went for a career talk and things and stuff like seminars and things like that, usually the foremost question is that how do we actually start? You know, and the thing is, you have to start by evaluating the state of the industry. And this industry that you pick can be anything based on your interest or based on your, you know, curiosity or whatever that you have. You know, so the first thing is that you need to know how to evaluate the state of an industry. And what I mean by the state of industry, you have to know what is actually the industry is about. Yeah, you have to know the players, and then once you know the players, you have to know the segments. You have to know the role and function of the engineers in that particular segment, and you have to understand what are the factors or the trends that are actually going to shake the industry. And why is that important? Because whenever you have an industry, whether you want to start a career in one industry that you pick, you know, there are many factors, many external usually factors that can actually shake the industry and make the industry go into a down cycle. Yeah, and you need to understand these factors for you to be able to make an informed judgment. Yeah, so the talk that I prepared today is like more like a story, you know, just like a story of how you actually start and looking into the industry, what is expected of you, and then what are the current issues nowadays later on, maybe in the 2 or 3 years when you go for interview, what are you expected to know, what your employers will actually ask you and expect you to know about and to be able to discuss about related to the business. Okay, next. Okay, the engineering profession. I think we don't have to spend too much on this. I mean, you guys know what engineers are, yeah? So basically, these are Formal definition, a person who design, build, maintains, engine, machines or structures. Yeah. But there are lots of jokes on the internet on what are actually engineers. Yeah. Some say that engineers are very creative. Some say that engineers are problem solvers. Yeah. And some say that engineers are like to fix things that are not broken. You know, you like to fix things. You like to modify things. So in your mind, you actually know what are the expectations of you for an engineer. You know, when you graduate later on as an engineer, you know actually what sort of attributes or characteristics that you need to have to perform as an engineer. The core characteristic is very simple, basically the desire or the ability to actually solve problems, yeah, to make things better. Yeah. But of course, people say that engineers, you know, should love mathematics. I don't know whether you agree with me or not. You know, I don't know how well you do in calculus and whatnot. I don't even remember anything now in terms of mathematics, so I guess that's okay. So that's the kind of thing that you first have to accept. You know, that people expect you to be able to solve problems. That is the main criteria of an engineer. Next, Hafeez. Okay, there are lots of jokes. I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer. Like I said, we are talking about expectation of employers versus your own reality. Yeah. So when you talk about mechanical engineering or even any engineers, you know that there are lots of expectations being put on you and versus the one that you actually find in reality. For example, when you talk to your seniors, yeah, you as a mechanical engineer, for example, you say that, okay, I learned a lot about thermodynamics, I learned a lot about solid dynamics, solid mechanics or whatever. When you ask your alumni coming to give talk to UTM, for example, do they say things like, you know, sometimes the things that I actually learned, not really the same as I work in industry. So there's a clear, not to say mismatch, but there's a clear difference between the expectation of a mechanical engineer or even engineer. Okay, let's talk about general engineers with reality and in the expectation of the student, for example. Okay, next, Hafeez. I think there are lots of slides. This one. So basically, these are all just relating to the different expectation. Next, we don't have to focus more on this. Yeah. So basically, you can see here what my friends think I do and so on. I think you guys used to see this in Instagram or whatever. Next. Again, when you talk about expectation, yeah, you always talk about the benefit. Yeah. When you start your engineering career, I think whenever I went for a career talk, the most question that you get to see, you know, is the pay okay? Is the pay that I'm going to get as part of my engineering career when I graduate going to commensurate with my abilities? Yeah. So those are very important questions. And this also relates to evaluating the state of the industry later on to determine, you know, whether the industry is worth going, whether the industry is going to pick up in the future, whether the industry is going to have a downturn in the future. So how do you know this? It is by evaluating the state of an industry. Yeah. So next, I think that's another joke there. Okay, how a mechanical engineer get rid of their neighbor's annoying dog. You can read this here. Basically, just to show you that the expectation is for engineers to solve problems. Yeah, not promoting anything here. Just be careful. Okay, next. Okay, let's move on. Once you know that that's your expectation as an engineer, what do I mean by evaluating the state of an industry? Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is that for you to be able to evaluate industry, you have to know what the industry is made of. Yeah. For example, here, I quite like this slide, which I usually use for my career talk. For example, in terms of the USA energy industry. In this slide, they break, right, the author break the USA energy industry in terms of the different segments based on the functions of the segments. Yeah. So once they break this into the function, they can see what are the roles of each segment and who are the players inside the segment. So why do we want to do this kind of thing? We call this like a supply chain or even a value chain analysis. Yeah. Because for here, you can actually see what are the actual tasks or actual functions of the segment inside an industry. For example, here, in terms of the energy industry, you know, energy can be viewed or can be carried in two forms, for example, in terms of fuel and in terms of electricity. Yeah? So here, for example, you can see very clearly that the energy industry, anywhere, for example, here in the USA, is broken down into the producer of the fuel, into the generation and distribution of the energy carrier, and also the end users. Yeah? And if you look at each of these segments that we put in the slide, there are different players, the company names here. You can do the same. I mean, I keep telling myself that I want to do the same for energy industry in Malaysia. I just don't have time to do it yet. But once you do that, you can see who are the players in each segment, and you can see their functions, and you can see, you know, where you can actually fit based on your interest. Yeah. So once you know the players, you will know that who are these players, who are the companies, your potential employers or your potential clients later on. If you want to start your own business, you can actually see where are your interests that you can fit in later on. Yeah. So next. For example, in my industry, MTC Group is in the industry of oil and gas and also renewable energy. So for oil and gas, we can break it down further. Yeah, I put down this slide here is to show you that, you know, for each of the industry that we pick, we can keep breaking it down into further and further to refine basically the tasks that are actually that are actually being carried out in the segment. Yeah. So for example, here in the oil and gas segment, you have upstream, midstream, downstream, basically the exploration and production of oil and gas. You can have the processing of oil and gas and also the use of oil and gas in refineries, for example. So by breaking down this specific segment, you can actually see where the things that you have learned that can be applied. Yeah. For example, as electrical engineer or mechanical engineer, you can actually see, you know, you can research, put more research into for example, exploration industry. Where does electrical engineer actually fit there, and which companies are actually doing work, and then you can actually find internship or job position there. Yeah. So for MTC Engineering, for example, we are operating in oil and gas and also renewable energy industry. So we are actually covering quite a number of tasks. In terms of we are also in the upstream and we are also in the processing side of the oil and gas. Next. Okay, once you know that the players and once you know the segments of an industry, so you know the segment, you know what they are doing, and you know the companies, you want to see now what are the roles of engineers in each of these tasks or in this segment. Yeah. For example, for me, I like to break it into 3 functions. When you look at engineering as a business, you usually it is easier to view engineering or engineers fit into 3 big functions. Yeah. One is called the business function, which is a supporting function. And the other thing is that what the business is actually producing, whether it is a product or whether it is a service. Yeah. So in terms of the product, it's easy to see because you are so used to engineers as being technical, designing things, yeah, or solving problems, yeah, like we said in terms of the expectation just now. So in terms of product, when you design something, we always say that, you know, you are designing something and you have to deliver the asset or the machine or whatever equipment to the client. And usually we term this EPCIC. Basically, you do engineering, you do procurement, you buy the things, and then you construct the thing, you install the thing, and you commission the thing, and you transfer the asset or you sell it to the client. So the core of engineering usually, especially mechanical, is that you are designing something. You are designing a new product. Okay, you are designing, you're building something. Yeah, a construction, for example. And all of these can be covered by the EPCIC activities. Yeah. So once you have a design and asset, you can actually transfer this asset, and the asset will enter into the operation and maintenance mode, yeah, which is what we call as the services business, yeah. So in operation and maintenance, as you can imagine, this asset need to be operated, it need to be maintained, it need to be repaired, you know, and it need to be dealt with in terms of the waste as part of the operation. And then at the end of the life of this asset, it need to be decommissioned, it need to be ended, yeah. So if you think of engineering as covering this spectrum, then you can see what are your core strengths as an engineer. Yeah. For example, if you are not so good at design, that's not a problem. Yeah. You're probably better at you know, like a task, you know, like a physical task, for example. Yeah. Doing maintenance and so on. So it's not a problem. So you don't say that you don't, because you are not good at thermodynamics or you're not good at something, that you are at a disadvantage. No. Because everyone has their own strength, everyone has their own interest. So it's up to you to actually find your own interest and base in your strength. Yeah. So what I'm trying to show you here is that a big picture. Yeah. You look into your strength, you look into your interest, and based on that, you say, well, look at what I said just now. You know, look for the industry that you like or the industry that you actually exposed to. Look for the players. Look for the segment that can actually match what you actually really planning to do or want to do. Yeah. It doesn't need to be exact fit, but at least it will give you some first direction for you to plan yourself into the first start of your career. Yeah? And again, in an engineering business, when you view engineering as a business, same as other business, it has all those supporting functions. Yeah. So don't be surprised if some of your alumni or some of the external speakers come to UTM, you know, and talk about, you know, they work in finance. Yeah. some of my mechanical engineering friends, they work as investment analysts. Yeah, they work in banks, or they work in like portfolio house and things like that. Yeah, some of them do business development, basically trying to find new business. They're not doing that technical stuff, but they're still an engineer. Yeah, they're still engineers. And some of them are very good at sales. Yeah, so why would sales and marketing require engineering students? Because engineering are basically critical thinkers. You guys are critical thinkers, and you guys can solve problems. And it's a good advantage to get a student who knows what actually that they're trying to sell. If you are trying to sell an electric motor, an electrical engineer selling an electric motor will be at a very good advantage compared to a marketing student, for example. Yeah, and of course, you can go into R&D. Yeah, some of you later on will go and further your master's straight away or PhD straight away, and end up doing research for a company or for a university, and that's being in R&D. Yeah? So that's why I give you this engineering business spectrum to show you that there's not that. Don't limit yourself to technical, to pure technical stream of your engineering discipline. Yeah. So, for example, some of you will end up doing telemanagement. What is telemanagement? Yeah, telemanagement is basically a buzzword, or like a fancy word for HR, human resource. Right? So basically, you manage other engineers, and it will be a good fit for an experienced engineer to actually manage other younger engineers, because you have been there and you know what are the skills required to be a good engineer. So I hope with this industry evaluation, you can look into yourself now and see what are my strengths, yeah, and what are my interests. Do I like automotive sector? Do I like aviation sector? Do I like plantation sector, oil and gas, energy, yeah, semicon, manufacturing? There are many industries. So look into that industry and think of it as a value chain. What does it require to deliver this product? Yeah, and then break into the players and see who are the players. If you can do that, then you can see the market for engineering in Malaysia is very big. Yeah, so when at the start of the talk you say that probably job market in Malaysia is not good for electrical engineer and so on. I don't think so. Yeah, it's probably you will hear a lot of saying that people can't get jobs and so on. But the thing is, you have to know where to find. Of course, there are limits. There are some up and down in terms of the job market, but generally, it's going quite okay. Yeah. Next. Okay. For example, just to give you an example in terms of MTC Group, basically, I just put one slide there to show you that we are covering the business spectrum as I showed just now. We are doing engineering consultancy. We are doing EPC/IC. We are also doing operation and maintenance of our ship. We are doing this transportation and installation. We are doing some R&D in terms of partnership with universities. I think with UTM, probably we have in some previous years. We do lots of R&D for ourselves. So we are covering this business spectrum, and you can see if you look at other companies in Malaysia, you'll find that the engineering business spectrum that I shared just now will be valid there. Okay, so put in your mind that that's how you should think about when you think of engineering profession. Okay, next. Okay, when you look at this, this is one slide that I share here, because for you to be able to evaluate an industry, yeah, you should be able to think of the evaluation structurally. What I mean by structurally, try to think of it systematically. Yeah. So when you go for an interview later on, or when you work later on, when you say try to evaluate the state of the company or the state of the industry that you are in. Usually when you are doing some evaluation, it's useful for you to use some kind of tool. And there are many tools out there. And one of it is this PESTEL analysis. It's a business management tool for you to evaluate the environment. When we say about environment, it's basically what I mean by surrounding, the surrounding of an industry or a company. Yeah. So PESTEL is like an analysis for you to evaluate systematically. Yeah. For example, in my industry, oil and gas, let's try and apply. Yeah. So next, Hafeez. Okay. P is for political. So try and relate whatever things political to the industry. Yeah. Whatever's happening in political, and see what are the effects of this political decision on an industry. Right. So if you can do that, you can try to see, if there's some effect in terms of this political, what will be the state of industry? You should be able to judge what are the effects in terms of this particular factor. Yeah. Next. Economy. I think you can just click everything, Hafeez. Yeah. So these are the things, the PESTEL analysis I just show you here, because I want to try and basically guide you to think structurally or systematically in terms of when you try to evaluate the state of the industry that you want to pursue your career on. Yeah, think of it in terms of how the economics going to change your industry and how the socio-cultural going to change the industry. Technological, for example, I think you guys are used to all this artificial intelligence, big data, whatever, all these new IR 4.0 elements. So those are technological factors that can shake an industry. And you should be able to actually think of this and try to relate to the industry of your choice so that you know what are the effects of these factors have in the what do you call this, the state of the industry. Yeah. So for example, if you look at nowadays, lots of people talk about environment. Yeah, there are many things about environment now, and the environment is becoming one of the main factor that has becoming what do you call this, a driving factor for industry. So we will go with this some of these elements later on, yeah, when we talk about the trends. Next. Okay, so now is the main element of the talk. Okay, once you know of the industry, when you know how to evaluate the state of industry, you know where to actually focus. These are the current buzzword for engineering graduates that I picked. When I went for an interview, tried to interview students, I noticed that some of the students or majority of the students have not a very good awareness in terms of these current buzzwords. Okay? So some of these buzzwords are actually things that are related to engineering practice. I think most of it are related to engineering practice. So probably we'll try and go into each and every factor, and then we will see how do they actually impact, yeah, the engineering practice. Yeah. So some of the keywords: digitalization, ESG, COVID-19, of course, SDG, circular economy, climate change is a very big topic nowadays. People talk about inflation. Yeah, probably one of the things that we pay less attention to as an engineering graduate is on the finance side. Yeah, and I think I want to highlight later on that this is a very big factor if you want to decide later on to go into engineering, because it will affect quite a lot of things, because engineering always typically, you work for engineering company, typically you need a lot of capital. Yeah, engineering is quite expensive business. So you will know that why inflation is actually one of the big factors. Yeah. So IR 4.0, net zero, decarbonization, carbon neutral. So all of these are current buzzwords that you are expected to know about when you go for an interview or when you actually work later on as a fresh engineer. Next. Okay, I think for climate change is a big thing nowadays. We are not going to talk technically about what climate change is. Basically, you know that it is a change in the weather. Yeah, and the reason for this, as you know, there are a lot of topics being discussed about. I think you guys cover this, but you see lots of news nowadays in terms of the impact of climate change. Yeah, so you see in terms of higher temperature and more heat waves, you can see that very evidently here in Malaysia. Lots of flooding, for example, lots of rains. So landslides and things like that. So we don't have to talk a lot in terms of the climate change as a phenomena. You know that already. Next. Okay. Next. Okay. What I want you to focus on is actually what are the impacts of climate change. You know what climate change is and how does that impact the business, yeah, the engineering business or the engineering economy, for example. Yeah, you know what are the climate change phenomena. You know what comes with climate change. So what are the impacts that requires engineers as a problem solver? Remember what I said before. Yeah, engineers are usually expected to be a problem solver. Yeah, when you want to design a solution for climate change or design a solution for flooding, for example, you need engineers. Yeah, so you need engineers to actually implement that solution. So what are the impacts? So you need to be aware what are the impacts of climate change and how does that translate into the potential work or potential challenges for you as an engineer later on. Yeah, for example, you look at this WMO climate risk and related impacts, extreme events. There are a lot of things that are going to happen in the near future if you don't take action in terms of the climate change. There will be, people being displaced by flood. There will be some ocean acidification. Yeah, you will be death because of extreme heat. So how will this change the future of engineering? Do you have to design more cooling? Yeah, better air conditioning? Yeah, do you have to design better insulation, whatever? Better flood protection? How does that translate into engineering problems? So you should be able to link this into engineering problem based on what you have learned or you're going to learn in the university. Yeah, and I put some clip there. Risk to global supply chain rising as climate change worsens. Why I put that? Yeah, because when you talk about climate change, when we talk about globalized world, you depend a lot on other people. Yeah, you depend a lot on other people, especially, for example, when you do engineering business, you depend a lot of your equipment, your material, for example, depend on other regions. When you have climate change, you have risk to global supply chains, which is what exactly happening now. Yeah, although probably partly because of climate change and partly because of the war and partly because of the pandemic, you see there are so many problems relating or contributing to the global supply chains that have caused havoc, yeah, in terms of the economics, in terms of the job market, in terms of the raw material, yeah, in terms of inflation. So all of these are connected to each other, interconnected to each other, and you should be able to actually link this. Yeah, so please try and read more so that you can actually relate this and tie everything together. Yeah, next. Okay, I put this slide here because I think the previous the slide that I was I used here is actually based on my slide because of for a talk on energy industry. Yeah, so I put here because I want to put a slide that show what are the actual industry, the actual segment of an energy industry that has a very big impact on climate change. Yeah? And you can see here the transportation, electricity generation, and industry has the biggest impact on climate change. So why I put this slide initially is to show you that climate change is a very big driver globally. Yeah? And the way that the climate change is actually driving the change in industry is very huge. Yeah? For example, now climate change, because of the need to reduce carbon dioxide, they're going to change lots of things in the transportation industry. For example, the EV, electric vehicle, or hydrogen economy, which we will talk later on. Electricity generation, instead of using coal, you're using gas. Yeah, industry, yeah, you have to change fuel into, for example, hydrogen. So I want you to be able to take climate change and try and relate climate change as a very big driver, driving the change in the industry, so that you can see how this industry is changing, yeah, and how you actually going to fit in later on as an engineering graduate going, into the industry. Yeah. So, for example, here you will see that many things are happening. For example, even in terms of agriculture, yeah, there have been lots of promotion for you to actually use less meat. Yeah, because basically meat industry is one of the things that is actually promoting to a lot of methane, for example. Yeah, so that's contribute to global warming or climate change. So those are the kind of things that you need to be able to integrate together. Yeah, next. Okay, so when you talk about climate change, when you talk about material and resources, yeah, you are dealing with finite resources. You talk about sustainability. Yeah, so I know in your curriculum, you always talk about sustainability. Yeah, sustainability in design. So part of the sustainability in design is dealing with waste. Trying to use less if possible, and that's why nowadays you can look into the news. People always talk about circular economy as opposed to linear economy. Yeah. So previously you have linear economy. Basically, what you use end up as a garbage. Yeah. Then you have recycling and economy. You just recycle. Yeah. You use some of it and you recycle. Circular economy take it another level where you take it. You use a product, try to make less optimum design. Basically, optimum design as possible. Use less material. And you can actually reuse the material, you can actually refurbish the material, recycle the materials, and again, you can repair the material. Basically, circular economy is that you design, but putting in mind that you have a very little amount of resource, try to design as little as possible. Try to design for it to be repairable, means that you can use it over and over. Basically, try to prolong the end of life of that equipment or asset, so that you don't have to use as much material. Yeah. So next. Okay, so basically you can see from here, there are 4 elements. I mean, there are lots of variations of circular economy definition. Yeah, you reduce, reuse, recycle, remanufacture. So basically what you're trying to do, you try to use as much as possible based on the initial amount of resources that you put in. That's the meaning of circular economy in a nutshell. Yeah. So basically it translates into raw materials conservation. You look at the outer ring, the red one. It leads to innovation. Yeah? Why does it lead to innovation? Because for you to be able to use less for more, you have to to be innovative, yeah, creative and innovative. You are an engineer, so you should know that, yeah. Yeah, it leads to durable products because, as I said, circular economy is trying to use less for more. So you should design it so that it can be used for as long as possible, yeah. And it created jobs because it creates support, it cascaded into lots of other economies that you are trying to do, like recycling, remanufacture, and so on. It promotes efficiency. And of course, because you do all this innovation and efficiency, it translates to lower CO2 emission. Yeah? So that is the purpose of circular economy. And you can see there are many companies nowadays that are promoting circular economy. Yeah? Previously, I think when you buy handphones, yeah, you tend to get your own charger. Yeah? So how do you actually promote circular economy? Probably by making universal charger, things like that. So this thing is happening, and then it's happening. Why? Because in classical economics, for example, you know that you are dealing with finite resources. Yeah. When you talk about sustainability, what you're trying to say is that you are actually trying to deal with finite resources. Yeah. So finite resources, one of the way to deal with it is by applying sustainability principle, and of course by applying circular economy. So try to think of it that way. Yeah. Next. Yeah, there's some clips. I usually like to put news clips, yeah, when I give talk, because I want you to see that this thing is happening on the ground. Yeah, it's not something that is academic. It's not something that people do just research about. I mean, I think UTM does a lot of research in climate change or even in circular economy and everything. But this thing is also happening in industry and in basically globally, yeah, on the ground. So you should be aware that globally this thing is a huge issue. Yeah, the waste management issue, the finite resources issue. For example, here in Canada is running out of landfill space. So where are you going to put all the waste? Yeah, Malaysia's leading FMCG firms to recycle 5,000 tons of plastic waste. Yeah, FMCG stands for fast-moving consumer good. Basically, the things that you always use and discard, like your toothpaste, your whatever. Yeah, all those are FMCG. So all of this plastic waste, where does it go? How do you actually design things without plastic? So those are challenges for engineers, and those are going to be big trend as you go later on in the 2 or 3 years. So try to think of it, maybe you are someone who actually like all this conservation. So try to think of it like that, and then try to steer your path towards that, because that's going to be a big trend going forward in the next, 2, 3, 4 years. Yeah. So Latin America is betting on, economy to solve its environment. So basically just trying to show you that we have a serious problem, not just in Malaysia, but other countries as well. Yeah. Next. Okay, this is a big word: decarbonization, carbon neutral, net zero. So it's a very huge topic. I just want to give you a feel of what it is. Yeah, basically decarbonization is basically try to get rid of the carbon. Yeah, how do you get rid of the carbon? By switching fuel, by catching some of the CO2. By try to minimize it as much as possible. So whenever you look at decarbonization, usually people talk about how to measure your carbon emission. Yeah. So if you look into the report, they always talk about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. I'm not going into detail of this thing, but make sure you know that what this thing is about, roughly. So basically scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 is basically tools for you to actually measure your carbon emission based on where the carbon is. Yeah? So scope 1 is a direct emission, scope 2 is indirect electricity emission, and scope 3 is basically the value chain emission. Of course, the scope 3 covers everything. Yeah? For example, how your employers actually, how your employees of a company actually, use cars, for example, or use trains, for example. Those are actually contributing to carbon emission. So decarbonization is an effort to actually get rid of the carbon. Yeah? And why is that? It's related to climate change. Next. Okay, I like this chart here because it shows you what are the kind of what kind of technologies or trends that you have going forward in the next 20, 30 years. Yeah. So you look at this slide here. Yeah. It shows you the trend of power generation mix as you go from 2020 to 2050. Yeah. So for example, in 2025, no new sale of fossil fuel boilers. Yeah. 2030, universal energy access, zero carbon ready. 60% of global car sales are electric. Yeah. So all of this, why I said I like this slide, because it kind of point to you which industry are going to be the main industries in the future. Yeah. For example, if you look at 2035, no new ICE car sales, no new internal combustion engine sales. So is it wise to go into internal combustion nowadays? Maybe no, maybe yes. So those are the kind of things that actually try to, to make you to think, what are the kind of trends that you're going forward that are related to climate change, related to decarbonization, trying to make less carbon. Yeah. So for example, you look at 2040, phase out of all unabated coal and oil power plants. Basically in Malaysia also, they're trying to, gradually phase out coal power plants. So which power generation is going to replace the coal power plants? Yeah? Is it hydrogen? Yeah? Is it solar? So all of these things are trend of power generation or power or energy what we call industry as you go forward. Yeah? And you should be able to actually appreciate the trend so that you can make an informed judgment later on as whether you want to go into any industry of your choice. Yeah. So for example, if you go into building industry, yeah. So how to make that building more energy efficient? Yeah. For example, you look at the what they call this slide here in 2050. Yeah. They are projecting that more than 85% of buildings are zero carbon ready. So what are the technologies to make a building zero carbon? Do you know? Yeah. How to make a building more energy efficient? So those are the kind of trends that you should think about, because all of these for sure are going to require mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, electronic engineers, civil engineers. So all of these are actually basically prospects, yeah, for you to create your own business there, or you want to join the job market, to put some effort or some investment into specializing into those areas, yeah, to put some investment into yourself, into further skills or education. So all those are the kind of things that why we need to look into the current trends. Yeah, next. Okay, just to show you the road to net zero. Yeah, countries with law, policy, documents, or concrete time pledges for carbon neutrality by target year. Yeah, I quite like this picture because it shows you know how the world is actually differ. How is the variation of the what do you call this commitment, yeah, to net zero, yeah, to basically trying to make decarbonization as fast as possible. Yeah. So if you look at Malaysia now, we are projecting. You look at the red color there. We are projecting to be net zero by 2050. I think you go to the next slide, Hafeez. So this one is just some examples, to show you that these things are not academic. Yeah, it's happening on the ground. This is for I think Petronas. Petronas allocates 20% capex for diversification, 5-year allocation, 20% to actually step up the initiative in terms of renewable energy, hydrogen, carbon capture, utilization and storage. So when you see that companies, yeah, big companies like Petronas are spending lots of money in terms of all these, what do you call, tasks, you know that it's going to be a huge driver for the industry, yeah, for any industry. Next. That one is Petronas, yeah. Malaysia committed to become carbon neutral nation by 2050. So like I said just now, so you know that as a country, we are also trying to promote decarbonization. We are trying to promote the use of renewable energy, going to promote the use of less carbon intensive industry, for example. And TMB also, we have a net zero emission, I think by 2050 as well. So all of these things, just to show you that, it's a big buzzword in the market, and you should be able to pick on this and, to try to add some knowledge to yourself so that you can talk about it, a lot more later on when you go to work. Yeah, you go forward. Next. Okay, and one big thing as well, people always nowadays talk about hydrogen economy. Yeah, how to actually use hydrogen as a fuel. Yeah, so basically you can see there. I just picked one image here from the reference there. Yeah, how do you use actually hydrogen to replace all the coal power plants or whatever carbon emitting plants that you have previously? Yeah. So remember, the energy usage is going to grow as we go further, more population, and you are going to take a big chunk of it because of the carbon emission. So how are you going to replace all of these carbon emitting plants with a very cleaner fuel? Yeah, you can go for gas, which is still contain carbon, but probably a bit much less than coal. Yeah, you can go to much cleaner like hydrogen economy, so that you can have a very good, very clear or very easy path to decarbonization. Next. I quite like this slide here because it shows you what are actually the supply and demand of hydrogen. Yeah. So when you talk about a market, you always talk about the supply and demand. Yeah. Market is all about supply and demand. So when you talk about hydrogen, where are the supply of hydrogen coming from? It can come from coal, it can come from natural gas, biomass, renewables, and so on. So when you look at each and every element of this supply factor in the hydrogen, you can see actually where are the industry going to focus in the next few years. Yeah, people are going to focus on the production of hydrogen, probably from natural gas, yeah, for steam reforming, or from renewable through electrolyzer, for example. So all of those are potential markets, job markets for engineers, potential challenges or potential, things that you need to focus on in the future. So in terms of the application as well, you look at how do we actually use hydrogen as a fuel. Yeah, it can go even into transport in terms of the normal engine, internal combustion engine, or fuel cell engine. It can go into fuel cell power plant. It can go into power generation unit for a building. So all of this usage will require knowledge on hydrogen and hydrogen economy. So try to think of it as the things that is going forward. Not so much on coal probably because of this climate change. You're going to focus more on the cleaner fuel such as hydrogen. Next. Okay, so this just one roadmap here. I think we will just skip here. It's just like one. Okay, just some news there to show you that it's happening here. TMB, Genco signs MOU with Aisha Petronas for ammonia study. So ammonia is basically a carrier of hydrogen. So they are trying to do some trial burn, basically try and combust ammonia, basically hydrogen for power plant. Yeah, so that is to demonstrate the usability of hydrogen as a fuel. Yeah. So Petronas, a big company, and INEOS, also a big company, exploring hydrogen opportunities. So all of these big companies, if you look into the news, yeah, if you know that we are talking about hydrogen economy, try to open your eyes and see, in the news, from time to time, there will be news like this coming up, and you should be able to pinpoint, these companies is actually going for hydrogen because of decarbonization, because of climate change. All these drivers are pointing towards the same direction, and you should be able to keep track of that factors lah. Yeah. Next. Okay, even from powering up of the hydrogen economy. So basically, more or less the same thing. Next. Okay, IR 4.0. I don't think I need to talk much. Basically, when we talk about industrial revolution, we are in the 4.0, the fourth revolution. Basically, the cyber physical system, and there are about 9 elements. I think the next one. Sorry. Yeah, so you can pick one of the things that you actually more related to your field of study. For example, for engineers, probably more on big data, IoT, yeah, augmented reality, simulation, for example. All of those actually are happening now. Yeah, you can actually see you're doing lots of simulation, you're doing lots of things with the cloud, you're doing lots of things with connected system like IoT. You're doing, for example, in mechanical manufacturing, you're doing additive manufacturing, all this 3D printing, yeah, and you're using data analytics, artificial intelligence, and so on. So all of these things, I think more or less, yeah. So what we terms all these things is basically people talk about digitalization, try to make everything digital. Yeah, I think automation. So all of the things I think is quite well known for engineers, especially mechanical and electrical engineers. Yeah. Next. Okay. So here just some news. Yeah. In fact, I think last 2 weeks there's some news on The Edge. Yeah, the newspaper The Edge. You can try and find it. I haven't got time to find the clip there, but it shows that there is a mismatch between this digital skill. There are two things. One is digital skills, and one is green skills. Digital and green skills are a mismatch for employers and employees at the moment. So for you, when you look at all this news, yeah, Malaysia digital economy records investment, digital economy to create many paying jobs, Canada struggles to prepare workforce for changing digital economy. All of these things shows that you have to beef up yourself in terms of digital skills. Yeah, whether it is something to do with data, whether something to do with infrastructure, hardware, whatever. So try to beef yourself in terms of that skills, as well as the core capabilities for mechanical and electrical engineers, for example. Yeah, try to think of it as something that you need to put efforts on for you to be able to complement yourself before you go for the first interview. Yeah, things that you need to at least prepare a bit, yeah, on it. Especially for me, for engineers, you're going to deal a lot with data. So for me, if you ask me in terms of what are the elements that I think is important, I probably think it's more on going for the data, the analytics, the big data, statistics, for example. There are a lot of things that you can do, especially when you talk about the current trend of automation and digital. Yeah. Next. Okay, so inflation, yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, there are lots of people saying about inflation, yeah. So some of us in engineering, we are not paying too much attention to finance, not to economics and stuff like that. Okay, we pay too much attention to technical, especially as a student, yeah. When I did my degree and PhD, I think I spent a lot of time trying to what you call equip myself with technical knowledge. I mean, I didn't know much about inflation, much about economy, and I found it now very interesting. Yeah, I found it that, you know, when you pay attention to this, it becomes like it shows you a signal to where the economy or the market is going. Yeah. So as a business practitioner, I mean, I kind of need that information, so I tend to spend much time trying to focus more on the economic side. Yeah, but as a graduate going forward, yeah, going into the job market, you should be able to relate some of these economic drivers into the engineering business as well, because sooner or later it will affect you, if not as an engineer, as a normal consumer. Yeah? So inflationary environment post COVID-19. Okay, why I put here as a main driver, because we are living here, we are living at the moment in a very high inflation environment. Yeah? So you can look at some of the news, even nowadays. Yeah. People are talking about banks raising interest rates. So why they want to raise interest rates? Yeah, interest rate for the banks. Yeah, go buy easy money as Fed and other central banks speed up rate hikes. So then people will ask, you know, what does that do with engineering business? Whenever bank raise the interest rates, yeah, the cost of doing business is going to be higher. Yeah? So when the cost of the business is going higher, it's going to erode your margin. Yeah, your business margin is going to erode. So basically, the prospects of the economy is going to go down. Yeah, the prospect of the business is going to go down. So it's very helpful for you if you know that, you know, this inflation is going to hurt which side of the economy, which economy is going to be good in inflationary environment, and how does business, for example, like engineering business, like oil and gas business, going to what you call operate in a high inflation environment, because that knowledge will give you the sort of what you call these insights into how this market is going to grow, and how is that going to be able to survive. Yeah, because as an engineer, sometimes we are so limited to the technical part of our work that we actually discard all these external trends. Yeah, especially on the finance side. For example, yeah, if you have all this inflationary environment, for you to be able to create a new project, yeah, to create a new infrastructure, going to be difficult, because it's very difficult to raise money. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. Okay, the layman term is that everything is going to be expensive, and you have to cut down your capital expenditure. When you cut down the capital expenditure, projects are not going to be a lot. They're not going to be a lot of projects. So what does that translate to the job market? The job market going to be going down. Yeah, because there are not lots of projects. So those are the kind of things that you have to be able to relate. Yeah. So Malaysia Central Bank hold interest record low, yeah, says Ukraine conflict, whatever. Yeah. So basically, at the moment, as we speak now, the US has raised their interest rate quite fast, and Malaysia, I think we haven't raised any rate at the moment. Yeah, we're going to go very, very soon. So you have to understand, why does Malaysia actually differ from the United States, and why is that? Probably because the United States is a developed country and we are a developing country. So what are the kind of things that you have to see? You know, what are the difference between these two economies, and how does that actually impact the job market? Yeah, for you as an engineer, or even as any other branches of study lah. Yeah. Next. Okay. So all of the, okay, I think the last one that's cover the whole thing is that when we talk about this SDG, yeah, I think you guys are probably more familiar of this thing, I guess, Sustainable Development Goals, yeah, sustainability basically. I think next, Hafeez, there's one picture there. All right, so probably in your study you have seen a lot of things on sustainability, yeah, sustainable development. But whenever people talk about sustainable, okay, usually people always think of it only in terms of environment, yeah. But sustainability usually is referred to as the triple bottom line, yeah, 3P, people, planet, profit, yeah. So basically, sustainability means three things. People call it triple bottom line, yeah, social, environment, economy. So basically, trying to make everything good for the people, good for the planet, and also good for the business. Yeah. So if you look at this sustainability triple bottom line, There's one thing that is, the United Nations has designed this, they call teams, Sustainable Development Goals. I think there are 17 there. And you can see nowadays, many companies are focusing on the initiatives to tackle some of these SDG. Yeah. So some of the companies will try to focus on, making that, what you call reduce inequalities, for example. Yeah. So some of it is trying to make energy more affordable and clean. Yeah. Some of it are trying to do some things in terms of peace, something like that. Yeah. So all of the current economic setting, most of that are going to tackle one or more of these SDG goals. Yeah. Next. Then come ESG. Yeah. So whenever you see the corporate setting, we are talking more about the corporate setting nowadays, you always come across this term ESG. Yeah. What is ESG? Yeah. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. Yeah. So when we talk about environment, it's the same as before. You talk about climate change, biodiversity, natural resource, carbon emission, pollution. Yeah. When you talk about social, in terms of the people, yeah, health and safety of the people, the labor standards, product liability, data security. So all of this you think in terms of people. Yeah. The G part, the governance part, is actually how you actually manage all this E and S. So basically, how do you actually do your business? And that's usually translate, in Malaysia, we always say that, we have lots of good policies. Yeah. But some of these policies does not translate into action. Yeah. That says that there's something missing in terms of our governance or in terms of our G. And that's why you say nowadays in the news, there are lots of these keywords of ESG coming out. Yeah. If you click next, please. Okay. Right. So for example, you see here, yeah, there are lots of things happening in terms of the ESG front, especially for Malaysia. I think in the next slide later on, you can see why. Yeah. So, but the ESG is one of the things that is being put forward by investors. Investors nowadays, they want to invest in a company. Remember, when you want to do engineering business, you need money. And usually you use either your own money or your public money. If you want to use public investors' money, you have to make sure that you are in the team. Yeah, you are basically conforming to the team of the investment. Yeah, investment nowadays, they always talk about responsible investing, sustainable investing, or ESG investing. Basically, they want to invest something that has values. Yeah, you're protecting the environment, you're protecting the social, and you have a very good governance. Yeah. So life soon will get a lot harder for companies that fail ESG tests. Yeah, ESG becoming mainstream. Yeah, green ESG bonds, the biggest trend. For example, the last one, the green ESG bonds. What does it mean? Yeah. So whenever you want to create a project, you have to raise money. You have to raise capital. Yeah. So you have to somehow promote to people, I'm doing some project. Yeah. If I want to do some project that says, I want to do some project now, but in terms of carbon emission, I'm not doing anything. No investors will come and give money to you, because at the moment, as we talk about in the last hour, climate change, decarbonization, all of these things are global themes. Yeah. So if you're not conforming to global themes, you are not going to be able to raise money and your project will not fly. Yeah. So basically, that is how all of this theme relates to engineering projects, and again, relate to the job market as an engineering graduate later on. Yeah. Next. So in Malaysia, as I said, particularly, we have a lot of problems. Yeah? I don't know whether you guys have seen this. In Malaysia, we have a lot of problem with ESG companies not to be able to sell. When we fail this ESG test, we are not going to be able to sell our product or services to the outside world. Yeah, because as I said, always remember, these are global teams. Yeah? Palm oil tussle with ESG. Yeah, ESG is a major concern for TMB investor. Why? For TMB, for example, if you were to build a new coal power plant, you think it's easy to raise financing as before? Yeah, probably no, because it is a polluting plant. Even with with all this clean coal technology, they are still viewed as a polluting compared to solar, compared to hydrogen. So people, investors with money, will tend to go for the cleaner option because of this climate change, decarbonization, and all those that we talked about just now. Okay? And you see this Samdabi plantation down 5% because of labor concern. Why is that? Even Top Glove as well. They are not something to do with environment, because in the United States, I think companies like Samdabi, Top Glove, for example, they have problems with selling their products there because of ESG concerns, meaning that they are being questioned on the labor practices. Yeah, in Malaysia, probably we are not very careful in terms of how we treat the labor, especially foreign laborers. Yeah, it's a very big issue nowadays. You see foreign laborers being treated not well. There are lots of middlemen. So all of this translated to a bad perception on the practices in terms of labor. And because of that, you fail the ESG requirement, and your product is not going to be able to be sold or to be sold to United States, for example, or Europe. Yeah. So because of that, you lose the market, and you lose your your competitiveness, and you lose the business. As simple as that. So that's why, you know, I put ESG as one of the last buzzword, because you tend to see all of these keywords happening at the moment now, and you will see that this is actually one of the main problems that is limiting the potential growth of the Malaysian economy. Yeah, you see that Malaysia nowadays, you see the performance of the stock market also is not optimal. Yeah, because of some of these problems. And it is up to you, you know, the young graduates who are actually going into the industry to try and change this, because you are going to be the future workforce. Yeah, and you're going to be able to use your knowledge, your skills to deal with all these issues, because these are the issues that need solution. And remember, engineers, we need to create solution, and you must be able to use your knowledge, the one that you learn in UTM, to actually solve some of the things that I've shown you here. Yeah? How do you deal with decarbonization? Yeah? How do you deal with climate change? How do you deal with ESG practices, the governance part? Yeah. So Malaysian ESG companies practices to be under more scrutiny. There's going to be more and more after this. Yeah. So it's not going to be, it's not going to recede. Yeah. It's not going to slow down. Yeah. Next. Right. So the big picture there, when you put this ESG and sustainable development, you know sustainability is based on these 3P: people, planet, profit, triple bottom line, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So how does ESG and SD come into the big picture? Yeah. You have this very good framework of SDG. You know that what you need to do to achieve sustainable world. Yeah. You know that climate change is a good practice. It's a good threat. It's a very big threat. You know that decarbonization is a must. You know that you have to somehow focus on carbon, less carbon, you know, green economy and things like that. But what is actually happening here? Because some of the things, as I said, you have a very good policy. You know that what you're dealing with. So the implementation part is sometimes a big problem. And that is why ESG come into picture. Yeah. The G is actually governance. If you click, Hafeez. Yeah. So good governance, what governance means? What good governance means? Yeah. You have to have a good core values. Yeah. You know your core values as engineers. Yeah. Try to do good to people. You learn in engineers in society. You have PO. I don't know what PO, PO 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. All those PO. You're talking about ethical practice. You're talking about professional code of conduct. So as engineers, as professional engineers, you are, you know, you have to abide by the rule of code of professional conduct. Yeah. So basically, you have to be able to do good. Yeah. To use your engineering practice, use your engineering knowledge to good practice. Yeah. To good use. So basically, you do that by practicing good governance. Yeah. Good core values, thinking of people, thinking of environment. Yeah. Thinking of ethical practice. So all of these are characteristic of good engineers. So I hope, you know, this talk is giving you just a full picture. It's very short, 1 hour. Give you a full picture. What are the trends that's happening in industry, and how you actually should relate what you learn in UTM in the next maybe 1 or 2 years, and how you're actually going to use this knowledge and fit in what are the current trends that is going to drive the industry in the coming 2 or 3 years. But I think that's the last slide. I tried to compress it. Okay, I think that's it. It's 1 hour. I think that's all. Yeah.
Nice timing.
Yeah.
So basically, what you told us that we should focusing on the energy usage, right? The trend in energy. Yeah. Then the in IR 4.0, the digitalization. Everybody is doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So before I ask my question, are there any questions from the class? Do you have any question? You can just speak out. You can just unmute.
Yeah.
Anyone? Oh, last webinar there were a lot of questions.
There's some question on the chat box, yeah?
Oh, yeah, you are correct. Okay. Okay, let me read out. Yeah?
Okay.
Boleh. Okay. Yeah, I'll read the first one. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. What would you advise us as uni students to do to be relevant in the job market besides merely studying technical knowledge? Do you mind sharing your experience on starting your business journey? Norshah.
Okay. All right. So basically, the technical knowledge, like I say, same as most engineers. I think we start on very, very technical. When I finished my degree, I was offered to do PhD straight away. Yeah. So I did that. And when I came back, I actually joined Uni10 as a lecturer. So I started my career as an academic. Yeah. So when I was doing this, when I was working as a lecturer, I mean, I found that there are many things that us engineers can do. I see that there are a lot of potential in terms of the market for engineering consultancy. That's what we started, in terms of engineering consulting, providing services. Yeah. So your question is how you actually prepare yourself, instead of just focusing on technical. One of the more important things, as I said, you have to be very well versed in terms of how the whole economy works. How does the actual economy works? Yeah. How do you do raise capital? Yeah. How do you actually invest? Yeah, and actually make money out of engineering projects. So those are the kind of thing, the knowledge that you need to be able to integrate together. For example, when I gave example in terms of this inflation, in terms of this capital market, for example, how do you actually start a business and how do you actually raise capital? Because engineering is an expensive business. I mean, if you start with consultancy, probably not that expensive because you're using just a man hour. But if you start with something to do with dealing with asset, trying to raise money to build, like what we did, FPSO and things like that, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And you have to be able to understand what are the kind of challenges required for you to be able to raise money to convince investors that, to put money in your project. So those are the kind of skills that I would suggest graduates to focus on. It's not so much a skill side. It's like so much like it's not like too technical. You just have to know how things work. How the economy works, how the money works, and things like that. Yeah. So try to focus more on the finance side as well as this technical, mechanical engineering or electrical engineering that you have. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Jack? On your sound. Okay. So we'll go to the next question. Norshah, from Yo Ziyun.
Where? Automotive engineer.
Automotive engineer. Am I able or will it be recommended? Because you say about the ICE, Norshah, about 2050, about the combustion, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're kind of worried if I were to work on other engineering sectors.
No. Automotive sectors is going to be huge. It's just that it's probably not going to be based on the gasoline or diesel. Combustion. Yeah. So basically, you can use hydrogen for ICE as well. Again, you can use fuel cell, or you can use electric vehicle as in connected to the grid. So the automotive sector is not to say the automotive sector is going down unless you're going for flying cars, but still it is still automotive sectors. Whether you want to brand it as aviation or what, I don't know. But the transportation sector is not going to go away. So you don't have to worry about that. You just have to make sure that the knowledge that you put in is going to fit in right when you go later on in maybe 2025. What's the trend that you're going to see that? Do you foresee lots of electric cars coming? Maybe yes, because nowadays you are talking about lots of implementation of infrastructure for charging. Yeah, you look into the news. There are lots of news in terms of companies wanting to come in and build in infrastructure for charging. So clearly they are driving this implementation for electric vehicle, and you can see all these tax, exemption on electric cars. Yeah, you look into Thailand. I think Thailand is going faster than Malaysia in terms of implementing electric vehicle, and I think more or less the country is going towards the same path anyway. And you look at all these major automotive companies, all these big names, Ford, whatever you name it, Porsche, whatever, they are all focusing something on electric vehicle anyway. Yeah, and of course they are not throwing down ICE, in the next few years. But of course the trend is clearly moving towards for electrification. Yeah, so
the fundamental knowledge is still very important, right? Norshah, the fundamental knowledge of transportation and everything. So that is still the core knowledge that
Yes.
you guys should know.
That's why I say, I mean, in terms of the core knowledge in engineering practice in Malaysia, I think UTM or most universities, many universities, you have enough knowledge already. It's not a question anymore. No, you learn a lot, but you must be able to integrate all this knowledge together with what's pockets of news happenings worldwide. Related to the first question just now, the one that you said about business. In order for you to start a business, you need to know how things work. Yeah, how does thing, how to raise money, how does actually to do marketing. So all of these are necessary skills. Yeah, probably you learn about finance. I know you learn about finance, maybe principle of management or something, or finance, engineering, economics. Try and broaden that and try to see what is happening globally. Yeah, because probably what you're learning from the textbook is academic, but what's happening nowadays because of the cycle, right? Sometimes it's inflation, sometimes it is recession, sometimes it is. So try to keep track of this, because once you go into the job market, you see that this is very much relevant to your career. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Okay, let's go to Umesh question. So Umesh is asking, when you mention knowing your players, what are the many ways can students use to explore the various opportunity available out there while we are studying without really diving in blindly just to get the taste of it?
So basically nowadays, I mean, if you compare your time with the time that me and Dr. Shafi were studying before, I think you guys are very lucky, because it's very easy now for you to attend, talks, or you want to get connected with industry players, through LinkedIn, have like a online platform and so on. So basically, the key is actually network. Yeah, you don't limit yourself to just the UTM community, or to just your alumni. Try and mix as much as possible professionally. When I say professionally, try to link with your what do you call engineering, what do you call society? Do you have engineering society? Things like that? Yeah, EEE and things like that, because that's what we call as a learning society. Basically, you can see the trends and you get to know people there. The reason why I went into business, when I went into this business in 2009, if not mistaken, when I was a lecturer, I was actually invited to deliver a talk. Yeah, to deliver a talk on computational fluid dynamics. I still remember, that's one of my area. So when I delivered this talk to industry practitioner at that point, I get to know one of the partners that I work with now. So that's why you see, sometimes things happen because, when you tend to meet other people, and these people will tend to open your mind. Yeah. So don't limit yourself to electrical engineers. Try to mix with others, because nowadays the opportunities are huge. Yeah, you can join an internship. You can. It is still compulsory right now, Dr. Shafi. Internship.
Yes. Yeah. They haven't done their internship. Maybe in next year they will do it.
But internship I quite like, because some universities around the world they are not make it compulsory for internship, right? But for Malaysia, we do make it compulsory, and I think it's a very very good opportunity for you to really see the industry and to learn as much as possible, and then to learn things that you are not learning in university. Something to do with how a business works. How do you actually run a business? How do you actually turn this into a product or profit? Not so much limiting to the technical part of the product. So things like that, you have to experience it. Yeah. I mean, of course, the online learning nowadays, you can find very good free courses that you can actually take. Yeah, and then you can actually network with so many people, and then you can broaden your views. So those are the kind of thing that you should take advantage on, lah. Yeah.
Okay, Norshah, if it's okay with you, because it's already 12:08, yeah. I think I'm going to stop the live session, but can we continue within my class?
Boleh. Okay.
Okay. All right. So for those of you out there who's listening and watching, thank you so much. So we're going to stop here as promised. So thank you so much, and have a nice day ahead. Okay. Thank you. Hold on. How do I